This is again Kushi speaking to you. It's been a bit since the last discussion or rambles, as I call it. It's just my nonsense as usual. This time, just to go ahead and get straight to the point, since it's been a while, we're going to talk about Paladin. So, I had originally planned previously to speak about Paladin. However, I had to hold it off and wait in order to process the fact that Paladin, has been reworked. Now, with these changes and with it being reworked, we can actually now discuss it, and I can actually discuss some of the changes that have happened from old Paladin to new Paladin, and I'm going to discuss what the differences are, the advantages as well as the disadvantages of the changes that have happened, what I like and what I don't like about it. So I would heavily request that either you take a seat or, if you're just listening to it, you don't have to really worry about gameplay or anything because I'm not really going to do very much until the very end. Because we're going to do a dungeon so that way I can show off, what's going on. But there's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So, where do we even begin? We're going to go ahead and pull up our actions here, so that way we can just go over the basics. So I'm assuming, obviously, oh, excuse me, I had a text message there. I'm going to go ahead and assume that as a gladiator, your fast blade, your fight or flight, riot blade into Rage of Halone, as well as the shield bash, shield lob, iron will, sentinel, and circle of scorn. Excuse me. I like to call it circle of storm because it's storm of blades and stuff everywhere. But just to make it real quick, this is your 1, 2, 3 combo. Where you fast blade into riot blade, Rage of Halone. Shield bash. Now, the problem with Shield Bash is that it's a GCD, and you don't really want to have that. So, I mean, you can have it just for the sake of having buttons, maybe at the beginning because it looks better, but I don't recommend actually using it. In fact, you can just take it off of your hotbar, because you're not going to use Shield Bash, you're going to use Low Blow. Because low blow is an OGCD, or an off global cooldown. So essentially with your off global cooldowns, whenever you use an attack, you notice with this here how it has the refresh rate. The problem with this is that you can't attack because everything goes on to a cooldown basically. So I'm doing this, and I can't do anything after I stun, whereas if I'm using low blow, I can attack, use low blow, and then attack again because, it's not on that global cooldown. So typically you don't want to mess with it because you can just use low blow instead. Now, Iron Will is your tank stance. They did make a slight change to it if I had to discuss it. So now you can press it and its icon changes so that way you know that you have it on. I don't know what the point of that was because that's what this is for. If this is because you get your job gauge, it activates whenever you activate your tank stance. So, I mean, I guess that's for people who have like simple mode, I guess, or I don't know, I'm not sure. But they did reduce the cooldown, so it's a lot easier for you to recast it, as opposed to casting it and then you have to wait for a bit, in case 2 tanks in 8-man parties don't know who's going to main tank. One can just quickly turn it back off without any problems. Shield Lob, best. It's a good ability. It gets replaced, sort of, but it's still useful for when you're pulling packs, when you're wall-to-wall pulling. And say you're pulling one and like they're chasing you as you're running with them, you can still use this, to pull them and maintain aggro, so that way you're making sure that you're not losing it. Or swap between targets while you're pulling, so that way you're making sure that you're maintaining the aggro, because it's got a really good distance on it. So, that's actually in a really good spot. Obviously, you're going to use it. And again, if you've seen any of my other guides, or rather, any of my other guides, but my other tank guide, I believe for Warrior, do not start with your gap closer, because you will be costing a lot of people their damage. So just don't do that. Just use this off rip, and don't run in at the boss. Don't start don't start a boss fight by running in and then doing this, because the whole point again is to use shield lob, bring the boss to you, and then when it's to you at the center of the arena, face it away from the party in case there's cleaves or anything. If you are aware of what's going on and you 100% know what you're doing, then you shouldn't have to worry about it. Or if you know that it's a wall boss and it's not going to move, feel free to do whatever, because it's not really going to matter. Alright, let's move on. Rage of Halone is a part of your 1-2-3 combo. It later gets changed, and we're going to talk about that once we get there, because I need you to keep track of where we're at. Sentinel is a really, really, really good cooldown. It's a mitigation, reduces all damage taken by 30%. That's as strong as Shadow Wall that Dark Knight has. And that is a really, really powerful cooldown. And speaking of, their cooldowns and mitigations, they actually did get additional stuff. Once we get to it, I'll go ahead and discuss it. Circle of Scorn is your damage over time ability. You use it basically, and just it's a big AoE, because it is an AoE and it does damage over time. The way that damage over time works is that it does damage on every server tick, so every 3 seconds you see it constantly goes off over and over and over again. It's a really good ability. It's AoE. Pretty much use that almost on cooldown. The way that it works is that if you look at it, you notice that the cooldown is 30 seconds, and Fight or Flight is 60 seconds. Fight or Flight increases all damage that you deal. Just to get into a little bit of the complexities, Fight or Flight used to increase only your physical damage, but now it increases all of your damage. So all damage that's dealt will be increased, as opposed to just only physical, because Paladin later on becomes a hybrid where it has a magic phase and it has a physical phase. So that's definitely something that you wanted to keep in mind as, a possibility of a Paladin, because it's got a lot of versatility and a lot of flexibility with how it works. Spirits Within is an OGCD you see with a 30-second cooldown. You'll use it just like Circle of Scorn. You'll use it one time out of your fight or flight window, and one time in your fight or flight window. So that pretty much is the rotation for it. Just make sure you use it in between your GCDs right now. That's pretty much it for it, because you just use it, because right now at level 30 it's not doing anything really yet. The only thing it really does is stuff later on, because it restores mana, but you haven't even gotten to the part yet where you can use mana at this level. So just pretty much spam it and just use it whenever you can. Sheltron. Now Sheltron is in a really good spot. So the way that Sheltron used to work, the the back in my day type thing, Sheltron actually increased block rate to 100%. But, block, people are, Square Enix has realized that block is not as good as it used to be. Because block does not block magical damage, it doesn't block crits, and it doesn't block unique damage, as they say, which we used to call darkness. We used to call it darkness damage back in the day, because it would just be something that you would take and you couldn't really do anything about it. Total Eclipse, that I did skip way back up here, is actually a part of your AoE combo, and that's why I wanted to wait, because Prominence is the follow-up to it. Now what it does is you use your AoE, and then you use your secondary AoE. Now this does restore mana, so you want to use this whenever there's 3 or more enemies. You need to be doing this. If there's 3 or more, you need to do this, because it's a really good damage combo, and you'll be using it later on with this extra effect that you see up here. But we're not going to go on that just yet. We're just going to wait a bit. Cover, I would not recommend using cover. Cover is, so the way it works, I wish I had, actually, hang on. There's a way to do this. I think I can use a chocobo for this. Let me see if I can summon mine real quick. It'd probably be the easiest way to do this, because I don't have anyone right here to demonstrate it on. There we go. So the way that cover works is you use your oath gauge here to use, the way it works is you cast a tether onto them, and all damage that the tethered target would take would then pass on to you. Now there's multiple reasons as to why cover is not a very good ability. So it does give you 100% of the damage that they would take. But the problem with it is that you're taking their damage in their place, when if they're playing correctly, you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to do that, because there's a better ability later on that functions much better than cover, that you want to use instead of using it. And we'll actually go ahead and speak on that later, but for now, I wouldn't recommend putting cover on your main hotbar, because it's not worth using. Hollowed Ground. Hollowed Ground is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, it's a really good invulnerability skill, because all tanks in this game have an invulnerability. Dark Knights have Living Dead. Gunbreakers have, Super Bolide. And Warriors have, what is it called? I use it all the time. Holmgang. But the problem with Hollowed Ground is it's the only one that renders you impervious, meaning you don't take damage from most attacks. But the problem is that cooldown you see is 420 seconds. It is way too long for anybody to feasibly want to use. So that's not something that you actually want to do right now. You want to not even bother with it, because, or rather, let me put it like this. You can use Hollowed Ground because it's a really good ability and there's no reason to not use it, but don't rely on Hollowed Ground, I would say, as a clutch. Don't think you're gonna clutch with it, and don't think of it as a crutch that's gonna help you in really bad situations, because Paladin has the tools necessary to survive without this invuln skill. But in the event that you do need it, there's no problem with using it. Just know that you're gonna get that big cooldown afterwards. And then we step back to the old ability. This was way back during Heaven's Word in Stormblood, I believe. Give me one sec here. Sorry about that. I had to deal with a phone call. My sister being ridiculous as usual. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about Bulwark and how Bulwark is an old ability. So to keep it frank, back during it was either Heaven's Word or Stormblood. Bulwark actually is an old ability that was removed and reworked into Sheltron. But Bulwark increased your block rate by 40%, I believe, because that was back when, accuracy was a thing and you had like a dodge chance on, that wasn't passive and whatnot. But then it was removed during Shadowbringers, because that's when the changes happened, and reworked into Sheltron, which just increased block rate. But since block is not a substitute for mitigation, they have recently given Sheltron as the mitigation. So now it reduces damage by 15% for 6 seconds, and then Bulwark was reintroduced to keep that block chance. Alright. It's mostly good. You don't want to use it by itself. Bulwark you want to combo with something, so you can use Bulwark on top of like maybe Rampart, or use Bulwark on top of Reprisal. Just combo it with something. Don't use it by itself, because block is not enough to help you. Okay. And going on here, Goring Blade. Goring Blade also was reworked. So the way that it used to be was Goring Blade, what was the meme for? Because it requires you to get to 60 to get Royal Authority, but it was Goring Royal, because it used to be a damage over time ability, but now they have reworked it into an OG CD. Because it used to be your alternate ability that you would use. So it was Fast Blade, Riot Blade, and then Goring Blade, and then Fast Blade, Riot Blade, Royal Authority would be what you would do. Because, I guess it was its damage over time, because it had 2 dot abilities. But they have since reworked it to make it more burstier. So Goring Blade is now an OG. It's an OG CD, meaning it has its own cooldown, but it still is on the global cooldown, so it has a recast timer. But it does hit really hard, and as you see with that cooldown, you don't want to use this outside of your fight or flight window because the potency is 700. So it's too big for you to not use in your fight or flight window. Divine Veil, they actually did make this better, though, because the way it used to function was simply you would activate the ability and you would have to wait until your healer cast a healing spell on you, or until you used Clemency on yourself to heal yourself and activate the barrier. But now the way it works is you just press it and it activates, it heals everyone, and it gives a shield now. So Warrior is no longer the only tank that's able to heal its entire party, so I can update that information. Now Warrior and Paladin can heal their party. And then Paladin has the extra benefit of, you know, being able to give that barrier on top of it. But Warriors is still going to be better because Warriors was reworked to still be slightly better because now it has a healing over time effect with Shake It Off. But we'll get to that once we update, you know, Warrior and whatnot. And we're just going to move on here. Clemency, I don't know. Clemency is another mixed bag, and it's something that I don't necessarily agree with. I feel like they need to make this an off global cooldown ability that has like maybe a 60-second timer and it just uses mana. But the way it works is, as you saw, it's a GCD that you can use on yourself or on someone else, and it casts a healing spell essentially. The problem with it is that it's a GCD again, so instead of dealing damage, you're healing, and it also has a cast time, so you're standing there not doing anything. You're not auto attacking to build up your gauge, and you're not doing any of your other like abilities and whatnot. You can't do anything. You're stuck standing there. So it has a use, but it's very specific, and I wouldn't recommend doing it because this gets replaced as well, like later on. Even if you wanted the benefit of being able to heal a person, there's still other ways about, you know, going about it that you could do instead of using Clemency. So for all intents and purposes, don't rely on Clemency. It's not a mitigation. It was never a substitute for a mitigation, and I'm glad that they made Sheltron actually mitigate damage. Now, Royal Authority, this is where things do start to pick up. Once you get your hands on Royal Authority, you've got your full 1-2-3 combo completed and like maxed out. Now, once you get to 60, it doesn't do anything. You just get the potency increase where it goes from being, you know, 330 potency up to 380 potency. So it hits a lot harder, and it's got this, you know, stylish animation that goes with it, as you see. So it looks a whole lot better, and it's got all these extra effects, which is really good. Let me see, you're getting in the way, so I'm gonna ask you to go on somewhere. Go on somewhere. But yeah, this Royal Authority is just a really good like overall ability, and it actually will be the main one that you'll want to use, obviously, because it's your 1-2-3 combo. It's your main way of dealing damage, but it does get some bonus effects later on. But process that information first, and we're gonna move on, so that way I don't lose anyone, and then we'll go back to it later on because we're almost there. But just know that it has extra stuff. You can see it on the tooltip here. I will go over that. Intervention is really decent. It's a good ability that becomes a great ability later on. At the beginning, it doesn't really do very much, but typically intervention is what you want to use instead of cover. Because what intervention does is it will reduce the party member's damage taken by 10%, and it increases the damage reduction by an additional 10% if Rampart or Sentinel are active when you throw it onto them. And it also, again, uses the Oath Gauge. I had just gotten rid of Suki, and, you know, I'm about to call Suki back here, because, again, I don't have anyone to demonstrate on at this time. I'll definitely have to see if I can get someone next time. But we're going to get Suki back here. But what happens is you basically just, boom, as an OGCD, you throw it on them, they get the damage reduction. So that will 10 times out of 10 probably save them a whole lot more than cover will, because cover then puts you in danger because you'll be taking the damage. And it's overall better to just use it. But you also get bonus effects if you do use intervention. So we'll come back to it. The whole thing is just to make sure that you understand that you're going to be using intervention instead of cover, just for right now. And here's where we start to backtrack a bit here with these next two. And I'm going to talk about them together because it's kind of necessary. So, as you saw, when you do your 1, 2, 3 combo into Royal Authority, you get this bonus that's referred to as Divine Might. Now, what it does is it makes our next ability here, which is Holy Spirit, it makes it an instant cast because it is an ability, rather a spell. It is a spell that is a GCD, and it does have a cast time. Now with that cast time, you know, you can only use it in certain instances. You don't want to sit there spamming it because your 1, 2, 3 combo is always going to outbeat Holy Spirit. But something of note, when you do get Holy Spirit, whenever you're pulling bosses, it's actually preferable for you to use Holy Spirit rather than Shield Lob, because even though it does have the increased enmity whenever you're initially starting, Holy Spirit does more damage because, you know, it's a spell that does 350 as opposed to this 100. So whenever you're pulling bosses at this level, you'll want to start with Holy Spirit, and then when they come into the center, then you attack them, essentially. But keep in mind, you still want to use Shield Lob because, again, you can't cast while you're moving. So whenever you're pulling packs, it's not like you can use Holy Spirit that much. The only time you can use it, actually, is whenever you're doing your 1, 2, 3 combo and say you need to move away. It actually does, like I said, Divine Might will make it an instant cast, so that way you can use it while moving. But also, as you saw on the Royal Authority, it actually does give Divine Might, and Divine Might makes that 350 potency attack into a 450 potency attack. And then to further elaborate on that, that's where Requiescat comes in. Requiescat is a single target ability, you know, with a 60-second cooldown, blah blah. But it does grant 4 stacks of itself, and it basically increases the potency of Holy Spirit, Holy Circle, or any of your Confiteor combo actions and spells. It makes them all have no cast time. So essentially, whenever you're starting, you know, your level, let's say, what is that? Once you hit level 68, you know, or 70, because at 70 you're going to have this, because Passage of Arms is essentially just another raid wide, just like Divine Veil. So Divine Veil grants that where you're blocking, the damage that's, being intaken from everyone. So that way no one's taking damage. But then also on top of that, what you want to do... Come on, Suki, stop hitting it. I'm trying to bring us over here. Is what you want to do... I know I'm jumping around a bit, but this is important so that way I can get back on track. Passage of Arms it grants 100% block rate, but it creates wings that have a cone behind you, and what it does is it's 15% damage mitigation from all sources whenever people are in that cone. So Paladin has the unique position of being able to have 2 raid-wide mitigations as opposed to 1, and it actually has the strongest raid-wide mitigation of the tanks because this is 15% from everything as opposed to 10% from magical or 10% from physical. It's actually from everything. So it's in a really good spot, and whenever you feel the need to use it because it stops your healer from having to work extremely hard. Because essentially you're mitigating that damage so that way the healer has to heal less. Alright, now we're going to jump back on track with Requiescat. So like I said, Requiescat activates and you get 4 stacks. Once you have these stacks, you actually can cast your spells instantly. And it does include Requiescat as well as Clemency. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you do it with Clemency. However, if you do have to use Clemency for any reason, I would use it within my Requiescat window. So that way it's at least instant. And you don't have to actually wait. Because that's the main issue, at the time, is having to wait for Clemency to actually go off as opposed to it just being instant and then you just wait for the recast time. But essentially your combo is gonna be, Riot Blade, Fight or Flight, or rather, excuse me, I'm sorry. It's Fast Blade, Fight or Flight, Riot Blade, Goring Blade, Royal Authority, Requiescat, and then just spam Holy Spirit 4 times. That's literally all you do. And just so that way you can see it. I probably should have worded that a whole lot better. Because come to think of it, that's not all you do. Because you're going to Fast Blade into Fight or Flight, Riot Blade into Spirits Within, Royal Authority into Circle of Scorn, and then double weave Requiescat into that window. And you can Goring Blade. The reason why you want to wait, because now that I'm thinking about it, you want to wait because maybe a different opener requires, a bit more time for their raid buffs to activate or for their buffs to activate. And you want to use Goring Blade while under as many buffs as possible because you don't want to wait a long time. Now, essentially, you're going to do that. And after Requiescat, then you just spam Holy Spirit 4 times in a row. It's not too complicated, and, it's straight and to the point. It's actually pretty simple, just to show. It's that, you activate that, you want to do that, bam. But since you have Divine Might, remember that you are going to have the extra. So you will be using it not 4 times, but 5 times. And then bam, that's it. That's all that you do, and that's your burst. And then afterwards, as you see, these are already set again. So you're going to Fast Blade, back into this, Riot Blade, and then go back into Circle of Scorn, because you see they're coming off cooldown. So there are reasons why the rotations are set a certain way, and they do have them somewhat balanced. Now, there's not very much in between here that's going to be too complicated. Holy Circle is, you know, basically your AoE spell. So once you get it, treat it like Holy Spirit, where whenever you use your AoE combo, you also get Divine Might, your gun to Holy Spirit in between, essentially. But we haven't gotten to the nitty gritty yet. Because what we need to do is we need to do a rare thing, you know, because with the tanks, you're going to go into this section because that's where a lot of the changes are. So in your traits, once you hit level 80, or rather, actually, let's talk about Sword Oath, because that's something to discuss. Sword Oath is essentially when you do your 1-2-3 combo. You do your 1-2-3, and as I know you may have been asking, what the hell is this 3 stacks? There's an extra ability called Atonement that you get at level 76, and this is basically just 3 stacks of a GCD that does a decent amount of damage, but the point is that it restores mana. So it restores 400 mana every time you use it. That is different than what it used to be, because if I remember right, I think it was a straight 500, but I think they reduced it to 400 because Paladin kind of really gets a lot of mana now, so it does not have mana problems like how it used to. So essentially, whenever you're doing what you're doing, you just continue as normal. You do your combos. Just remember, when you Royal Authority, you do have 3 stacks of, you know, Atonement to use, and you want to use those. You're not going to fit them within your fight or flight window, so don't attempt to. It's not worth it. You're going to fit 1 maybe in this window, but then afterwards you're not really going to worry about it. Now next, we're going to go, you know, into Confiteor, you know, because that's the only thing. Because the Intervene is just a gap closer. That's like self-explanatory. You really just use that on cooldown whenever you have 1, and then keep another one in case you get knocked back by like a boss and you want to close that gap just to get back to them. You may see it on whichever dungeon I get, but that's definitely something that you want to do. And then afterwards, what's going to happen here is, you know, at level 82, you get a trait here that's referred to as Sheltron Mastery. Because, you know, the enhanced Requiescat, essentially everything is the same with your combos. Royal Authority into your Circle of Scorn, into Requiescat, and you're going to use that 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, but then once you get to level 80, your last one is going to be this big AoE spell called Confiteor. It's a big blade that appears out of nowhere. It's really good. It's AoE. It's got a lot of damage. It does everything that you need it to do, essentially, without any problems. Which is overall, you know, a really good position. You know, I know I'm going over this as, you know, 1 by 1, but the reason why I have to is because things are complex about it, and it was reworked, so people may not know or may be unaware of what the changes are. Now, here's where things get really, really, really good, and I can explain my stance on Clemency being useless and Cover being useless. So at level 82, you gain you know, Sheltron Mastery, which turns Sheltron into Holy Sheltron. Now Holy Sheltron, as you see here, It reduces damage by 15%, but it also grants Knight's Resolve, which will reduce damage taken by an additional 15%. So it's 30% damage mitigation, and it is additive in this case. So it's 30% damage mitigation, and you get Knight's Benediction, which gradually will restore HP with a hot effect, which is health over time. It's a heal over time. And it's a 250 cure potency for 12 seconds. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is that better than Clemency when Clemency is just a straight heal, you know, for 1,000, and this is only 250? Remember back to what I said about how damage over time works, how it ticks every 3 seconds? Heal over time works the same way. So 250 will happen over 12 seconds. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 250 times 4 is 1,000 potency. So now you see that it's literally the same thing as Clemency, only this one is free. In this cost mana. This takes time, but you have 30% damage mitigation. You're not dying anytime soon, let's be honest. You're not dying when you have this on. Unless you're really in something. If you need Clemency, you've done something wrong. And because you should be able to get out of it using Holy Sheltron, or at the very least, you could pop Holy Sheltron, and then if you get close to dying, you could pop Hallowed Ground to give your healers some time to heal you, keep doing damage, as opposed to using Clemency and not dealing damage. And then that's not also to include that later on, if you look at your traits, whenever you perform divine magic, you get a healing effect whenever you use any spells. So, if you're using Holy Spirit, Holy Circle, or Confiteor, you heal for 400 potency. And that's not also to include that later on, at level 88, Divine Veil also has a healing effect, which is why it heals now. And it applies to everyone. So, that's the reason why it's not good. And then the reason why cover isn't good is because those same benefits that apply to Holy Sheltron will also apply to Intervention, which is why I swear they should have called it Divine Intervention. But essentially you transfer everything onto them. So not only are they getting the 10% damage mitigation along with the additional 10%, but they also get an additional 10% on top of that, so they can get 30% damage mitigation on top of the healing effect. That's 1,000 cure potency overall for 8 seconds, and they get healed for 12 of it, and it uses your oath gauge, so it's free, as opposed to using this, which, I mean, if you use cover, it protects them from dying, but they have to stay within a certain range of you, and you're taking damage, and they aren't being healed yet. Yes, it's giving them time to get healed, but you could just help the healer do it by just putting intervention on them. So I don't see a reason to just not do it, because you have to be within a certain distance in order to use cover, because cover only has a range of 10 yalms and intervention is 30. So like you have to be nowhere near them. You don't even have to worry about it. If it's a caster and they're like way over there, like way over here, and you're over here, you can't cast cover on them, but you can cast intervention on them and just heal them. So like that's the reason why you don't really use Clemency a lot and you don't really use cover a lot. That's why it's over here. That's also why Shield Bash is over here, because I don't really use it. But in case I have to, I can. but it will be there, as an extra ability here. Spirits Within Mastery is, something simple. It changes Spirits Within to Expatian, and Expatian comes with a lot of benefits, where instead of Spirits Within being, a single target, 270 potency attack, it then turns into a 450 potency AOE ability, not spell, excuse me. But as you see, it does AOE because it has an explosion from the center. And that is just, that's really, really good. Like, Paladin is essentially, just this powerhouse that kind of can do whatever it wants. You're using your AOEs. You're not really worrying about anything. You don't have to worry about targeting because, you've got all these AOE abilities. In fact, I think if I remember right, it has the most, AOEs at the moment. Because it's got all these extra options. Which is a, really good position for it to be in. And then, just to go ahead and close things full circle, because I know anyone who already knows is like, oh my god, just talk about it already. Yes, we have the Blade, Unlimited Blade Works combo, as people call it, where after you use Confiteor, you can use Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, and Blade of Valor. Now, there is a catch, because this has been changed. The way it used to work was you would Requiescat 4 times. You would Requiescat and then activate Holy Spirit 4 times. And then your 5th one, because back in the day it had 5 as opposed to 4 stacks. You would use 4 of them on Holy Spirit and your last one on Confiteor. And then after you Confiteored, you would Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, and then Blade of Valor. Because Blade of Valor was a dot. It used to be a dot. Weird enough, it was a damage over time ability. But they had, since Goring Blade is no longer a dot, and Blade of Valor has no reason to be a dot either. So neither one of these are damage over time and are pure damage now. And the way that it works now is you actually will not be able to fully take advantage of this combo unless when you use Requiescat, you immediately Confiteor. Because you get 4 stacks. So you use Requiescat, the first one goes with Confiteor, the second one goes to Blade of Faith, third one goes for Blade of Truth, and last one goes to Blade of Valor. Because all of these 3 will have significantly reduced damage if you don't use them within this. So it's a way to punish you. You can still do it, but you'll be punished if you do so. Because you see the potency, if you don't use it within Requiescat, is 200. If you use it in Requiescat, it's 700. Keep that in mind. 200 goes to 700 if you don't mess it up. 300 becomes 800 if you don't mess it up. And 400 becomes 900 if you don't mess it up. And all of these will restore health. And I believe they use 1,000 mana. Because before they used to restore mana, now they use mana because you're using Requiescat to do it. So what your rotation is going to look like is Fast Blade, Fight or Flight, Riot Blade into Expatian, Double Weave, Circle of Scorn, Goring Blade into Royal Authority, Requiescat immediately Confiteor, and then Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, Blade of Valor, and throw in your Holy Spirit. You can throw in Holy Spirit in between there anywhere that you want, because using Holy Spirit Within Divine Might will not break any combos, and Goring Blade will not break any combos. Actually, I believe Goring Blade will break your magic combo, so don't use it within your magic time, I believe. If I'm incorrect, someone will correct me. But I believe it does. I want to say that it does. So it's better to just not do that anyways. So what I'm going to do very quickly here is I'm going to showcase all that I've said just to show that it makes sense and it's not me just making stuff up. Definitely give me a bit because I need to take care of some business here because it took me a while to get home. I'm going to go and get my little niece and my little nephew from the bus stop very quickly. And then after I get them, I will be back here to go ahead and run a dungeon. So stay tuned. This shouldn't take very long. I will be right back. Instead, I'll just leave you here to just go ahead and ponder over what I've said, and then we'll run a dungeon right quick. All right, we have returned. So let's go ahead and get this started here. We're just gonna run anything because I need to do this anyways. Or actually, no. What we should do, I guess, to save people in case they haven't done any of the new stuff, I'll just run 90 stuff. But yeah, overall, it's in a really good position. Where's my tank privilege? I guess I should have ran this earlier. That's the thing about when you do things live instead of doing them via recorded video. We just mostly have this just standing around. I guess while we're here, we can talk about some of the nuances. Make sure my portrait's okay. That's the other bonus. Paladin has really good like portrait capabilities. This is the one that I use. It's really good. And as you see with the wings on the hair, that's kind of a really good bonus as well. Yeah, I don't have any of the tomes of causality because today is reset day, sadly. Let's go ahead and get started. They want me to take a bit here. I mean, tanks are mostly self-reliant when it comes to heals, so I'm not really too concerned with what they're saying. I know they said a little bit. This is where clemency does come in handy. So it's not necessarily you get rid of it completely. But in cases where you do what I just did, where you forget your tank stance, it does come in handy. So we're going to use this and activate our block. And as you see, the healer's not really going to have a hard time. I'm literally paladin, so I'm like the perfect like substitute for them. They don't even have to really worry about healing because I heal myself. If I was Dark Knight, maybe there'd be an issue, but I'm literally paladin. If it was paladin or warrior, you do not need to really take it slow, because I mean they'll do most of the work. So we're gonna use this and get one in. And the way this works is just, you have to watch out for the thing, where it pops up at. It's one, and if you look at my mana, how it just regens like crazy. Back up to full just about. Yeah, see? Already back up to full. And there's going to be two, and we need to find a point in where they don't intersect that, which is over here. Intervention, so that way our healer is good. It's making them take less damage and it counters the little bleeding. Fight or flight, we'll do one. One of those, one of those, one of this. 1, 2, 3, and there's 4. Goring Blade, and then the last one will be our Holy Spirit. Boom. And we're good and set. Comes the big wave, and what we're going to do is wait for it to hit and then heal to help out our healer. So that way they have to do less. This is like the worst tier, I guess, to be a healer unless you're doing like in-game content. But like in dungeons, oh my god. Like, because the majority of the tanks, except for like maybe Dark Knight, are like completely worthless because you don't need a healer for them anymore, sadly. Alright. But as you see, mostly, like, there's not really any issues. Paladin's pretty straightforward and it's pretty safe. Am I going the wrong way? I'm being dumb. Oops. To see, I wasn't paying attention. And they're saying they haven't healed. They're doing fine. They're doing fine. They probably were saying it just to be safe. But realistically, they're good. I'll take this right here. I'm starting to remember the layout. It was mostly because I was on the phone there. And if, like, anything happens, then, like, I mean, shoot, we have, you know, our invuln to help with that. And we're going to go immediately into our AoE, which is, you know, our unlimited Blade Works combos. Bring them over here. You see how much the intervention actually helps? Intervention is just really good. Instead of using cover on them to take the damage for them, I'm just using intervention and it counters it instead. And we're gonna 1, 2, and then on the third one we'll activate it so that way we can get our damage in. Help out the healer. Alright. So far so good. No issues, no problems, no nothing. Alright, and we're just gonna sit here and try to not go down here. You took like no damage from that at all, really. First one will be down the middle. I'll get them before they drop. Boom. Easy. That one could be better, but it looks pretty decent. Alright. But that will be, I guess, pretty much just Paladin as a overall. It's really set. Its damage would be on the lower end. In fact, I think, I have yet to see the updated stuff, but I think it's still at the bottom. But it's kind of in a better position than it used to be, where it was kind of convoluted. The only hard thing is really just relearning it, you know, after you've already learned it before. But overall, that is pretty much how it works, without any problems, and pretty much set. Oh, any questions or anything, definitely don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, I guess just continue to try to learn it and gear up.